I came into the industry with two very little girls on my own. I am a single mom, so have had them pretty much 100% of the time by myself. So many sacrifices with being up late, working late hours. You know, I would get them to bed, and then I was in bed working on my marketing or admin or doing contracts at night in the middle of the night just so that I could spend the days with them. I would say probably 80 to 90% of my business is friends, family, referrals. Okay. I definitely focus on that. I like to build good relationships. I have a lot of success stories from that, which obviously in turn has them sharing my information, which is I'm so grateful for. I think a big issue that we've seen is there's so many people trying to do it now. There's a lot of people that are coming in that are just makeshift, pretend like they know what they're doing. They
watch a YouTube
throw
video.
It back, throw the house back together, slap some, paint on the walls, and then they try and resell it. And then that house sits on the market forever. Yeah. And they're trying to recoup their costs. So then it's, it's not going to be one that my investors are going to purchase.
Okay, so here we are, Rate of Success podcast. We have a very special guest. Okay, so Kelly Lach is with us. So Kelly and I have been working together for a period of time, and it was this was the time that we needed to get together and kind of finally do this. We've talked about it a lot, so I'm excited. So Kelly, why don't you tell a little bit about where you're currently at and how long you've been in the business?
Sure. So I am at Keller Williams Infinity out of the Naperville office. I started in the industry in 2016, so about almost 10 years ago now. But I started out with an agent working with her admin, marketing, doing the back end work for her after I left my corporate job. Decided to stay home and needed to work. Got into the industry doing some work from home for her, and then she moved and transitioned me to another agent, and he kind of gave me the drive to get my license and get out there and start building my business. So got licensed in 2020.
Wow. And, what a time to get licensed.
Yeah. It definitely been through the ringer of different markets and kind of seeing how everything went after COVID, and now with the new transition happening right now. So it's been interesting.
So one of the questions I always ask, and you kind of asked it, but it's always something I love to ask, is like nobody goes to college and says, I want to be a realtor or a lender. We all kind of, find this business by accident. Yep. And it's not by design. I didn't plan to be in the mortgage business. I kind of ended up here by mistake. So what was that? Like, how did you find here? Did you know someone to get the admin position, or how did you get drawn to real estate? Yeah. So the agent that I ended up starting to work with sold my mom her house. Okay. And then she sold me my first two homes. So we had just bought a house. I was pregnant with a new baby on the way, and knew I was going to stay home. And quickly after I left my corporate role, I called her and I'm like, hey, you were saying you needed some help. Like, I need to work. I was built to work. Love being at home with my kids. Absolutely was grateful for the opportunity to stay home, and I got to work from home and raise them. But she was just sweetest woman, and she took me on right away. She absolutely, open arms, like, yes, please come help me. This was kind of a time when marketing was evolving to online with social media. So it was a great fit. Like, I could be at home and do the online stuff for her while she was out in the field. That's great. And especially being, a mom and being able to spend time with your kids, which is so great that most people don't have that flexibility. But then also get the experience, because I think I always say, like, I didn't get the opportunity to work with another loan officer when I got in the business, but now having Tom and other people on my team, like, I wish I would have had that opportunity, because it really helps you avoid a lot of the mistakes that a lot of people make when they get in the business. So what was that like, kind of getting a little bit of a taste of the business? Oh my gosh. And then having that experience where you could, because let's be honest, most of our admins do the work anyways, and you're really kind of the brains behind the operation. My Jody and Al and people on my team, like, they do all the work anyways. Way more than you expect. Exactly. Way more than anybody knows. So what was that like, being there and then the transition into getting into the business yourself? So the first agent I worked for, she took me on. I was handling mostly just her marketing stuff, some admin work too. But I did get to go out with her once or twice in the field and kind of see how she presented homes and how she went about doing offers on the back end, and got a really good taste of, like,
how she handled and structured her business. She had actually owned her own brokerage, and she sold that off to then transfer to Keller Williams.
Okay.
Just because she was getting ready to retire and move out of state, and it was just an easier adjustment for her to kind of go with a bigger brokerage that she could carry with her. So it was really cool being able to work with her on the back end and kind of see how she handled her business. And then when she moved, I was transitioned to a new team and got to see how he handled his business, which was completely different. Yeah. So very different agents, both top agents in their industry, but they did stuff a lot different. So it was really cool to get experience and
so how much did that experience kind of evolve where you are today and how you do things, and is that a lot? Do you find yourself falling back a lot on what they taught you in the beginning?
Yeah, definitely. So a lot of the networking stuff that, my first agent taught me, she was great about getting out and talking to people and creating those relationships. To the last agent I was working with that kind of was really, really good at all the building structures and every single thing in a home, and knowing how he was in the flip industry himself. So he knew every single thing about a building. So that helps my knowledge when I'm working with my investors, because I can tell them, like, okay, this is the XYZ that you need to do to get your return on investment. So very different agents and what they provided me with insight on and experiences, but super cool to have them both, and I've taken so much from both of them.
It's great. So getting the business in 2020, we joke about this all the time. It's like, we all thought we were so great during that time because the phone was ringing, and it was like, wow, rates are low, phone's ringing. Really our biggest challenge during that time was we were order takers. It was like we were just, drinking from a fire hydrant and just trying to get as much business as we could, getting offers accepted. And then the market shifts, okay? So what was that transition like for you? And how, did you kind of lean on the experience that you had? Obviously, being an admin and being around top agents, but that, it was a big transition for all of us.
Yeah.
And we had to go back to basics. We had to really think about, marketing and, and the honest thing is a lot of us got away from the things, prior to 2020 that we did because we didn't have to do it.
Just to keep the business running.
So what was that like being, you get licensed, you're in the midst of COVID, and then all of a sudden the market shifts, rates go up. What was that transition like?
It was a really, really interesting time because I had started on the second team that I transitioned to, just handling the marketing admin. And then, he was so busy with his business that's when he kind of motivated me to then get licensed so I could help with his clients and get out there, do open houses and things like that. So that kind of showed me the beginning stages of it with already having the clients on hand. But then, of course, like you said, then we hit that crazy COVID time of totally different market. So then I was out there trying to fend for myself, get my own business while still handling the marketing and admin for him. So it was kind of nice. I had that crutch to lean back on as far as the income piece. But yeah, definitely interesting, helping me figure out how to structure, and not something that I had seen really either of them have to do because they kind of just had that natural flow of business before that time.
And I saw, and I think it's a great point, but I saw one of the headlines out of the family reunion, for Keller Williams was Gary Keller had made a comment that there's no easy business left anymore. Like you have to get used to, really what I always say is, and it really, it's kind of a message and I've been saying is we have to kind of manufacture more business nowadays. Like it used to be someone would call us and say, hey, Kelly, I'd like to list my home and, soon, can you come out to the house? And, you would be there listing the house, you would market it. The house would sell. You go find a house. So there were homes available.
Many options.
And that was the life cycle of a buyer or seller. Now it's like, and I hear this over and over. It's like, you got to go to multiple listing presentations because the client's like, well, what? I don't want to sell. I can't buy anything. Like I have a 3% rate. Why would I want to sell? Like the conversations are totally different. Okay. And I feel like what I've been saying a lot is it's almost separation season. Like we're separating the winners from the industry from the pretenders. And I feel like, one of the things I've been telling my team, and I said it last night to a group of realtors, is like you have to think bigger. This is the time to think bigger. Like if you say, I want to do 20 homes next year, I want to help 20 families, you almost got to be like, you know what, I'm going to make that 40. Like you really have to think bigger because we've been last year almost in survival mode.
Yeah.
And now we're kind of in growth mode. Like we're thinking about, like, are we through this? Is it ready yet? And everyone's was so much noise last year. So
Yes.
do you feel the market shifting at all? And do you feel your conversations obviously are different than what they were a couple of years ago? But have you seen that start to evolve a little bit over the last few months?
Definitely, yes. I think the National Association of Realtors lawsuit has brought up many conversations with clients, especially people that are new to it, first time purchasing a home, or they've lived in their home for a long time. And like you said, they have a low interest rate. So now they're kind of in this spot, like they don't want to pay for a new home already. And then to kind of add in this big lawsuit that everybody doesn't really understand. It's a whole nother conversation. So it's definitely been, I think, much more detail needed.
What have you learned from that conversation, having it with buyers? Just, is there something that you've taken away, like just how much people don't really understand it? Is that?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think that, I mean, requiring a buyer agency agreement signed up front, not something I particularly love either. Not something I would probably like to have to do immediately going into meeting somebody. And now it's a requirement. So it kind of sets the stage a little bit different than if you just have that open conversation of trying to introduce yourself and meet someone and prove yourself to them as the agent that you are and how you can help them. It's much more of like almost like a pressured situation.
I've heard a lot of people use the dating analogy where it's like a first date where you had to get a signed agreement to go on a second date. It's awkward. It's not, but do you feel like there's been anything good that's come out from those conversations that maybe, you know, if you would meet someone at a listing for the first time to show them a home because they were like, you know, oh, I got to see this house, and you would just drive to the house and then you'd never hear from the client again because there was no, like, do you feel like that's created any opportunity for you?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's just gotten more conversations flowing right away. I think there is that, you know, if you're hosting an open house and you meet 5 people, none of them are probably going to call you back. Whereas if you're having a more in-depth conversation with them there about how you can help them, you know, what's happening in the market and all of that, it kind of gives you more of a little in-depth into who you are and how you can help them. So I think it's just presenting more of like being able to, it gives more opportunity, I guess.
And you always strike me as someone that has like a great deal of confidence. Like you don't have, like, you're always very solution oriented. You don't focus on the problem. Like there's just like, it's something where, you know, I've been in the business 20 years. I've worked with a lot of realtors, and there's, you know, I always say there's like a real difference. Like there's some people that just, everything worries them. Everything, you know, is a problem. And then there's other people that are just, you know, they kind of put their head down and they just, and you strike me as one of those people that just, you know, you're very solution oriented and very headstrong, and like you just get shit done, for lack of a better, which I love. But I feel like people that are that way can handle the conversation at a kitchen table, face to face with someone a lot better. And I think, you know, I know the stat gets thrown out a lot, but, you know, 70% of realtors didn't even close a deal last year, whatever the number is, 71%. And I think it comes down to that confidence and your ability to really get face to face. I mean, how many industries, I say this all the time, but how many industries are people still going to someone's house, sitting face to face? Okay, like
everything's online.
Everything's on. I mean, financial advisors don't even do that anymore. They make them come to their office, which it's always easier when it's in your office because you're on your home turf. When you're in someone else's house, that's different their place. And so, where did that confidence come from, and kind of like, you know, where did you learn that?
That's a great question. I think that I'm just so passionate about it, honestly. It's not something that I thought about growing up as a little kid, like I'm going to sell houses. That was definitely not on my radar.
What did you do in the corporate world?
I worked for Aldi corporate.
Oh, okay, yeah. I actually know a realtor's daughter that is working for Aldi, and she loves it.
I absolutely loved it. Honestly, if I wasn't getting pregnant and all, you know, life situations, I would still be there. Still great friends with a lot of people still there. So, awesome job coming out of college. Like, grateful for it.
Those are great people to with their HR department. I was gonna say, like, you should try to weave that in.
So I think
what did you learn? I don't mean to interrupt you, but what did you learn in the corporate world that you kind of take to? Because, you know, I didn't know that about you, but some of the best realtors that I know come from a corporate background.
Interesting.
Because, and this is my opinion, you know, corporate, you know what it's like working for Aldi or a corporation. It's like, it's very structured. and it's very, you come in, it's their culture.
Yep.
Like they have a very specific way they do things.
Yep.
Okay. I think people that don't have that corporate background kind of, I just want to get into real estate because I want to make my own schedule.
Yep.
And you don't make your own schedule. Like you're
right. You're always working 24/7.
So what did you take from the corporate world that you brought into your business?
A lot of the way that customer service is handled, I think, is huge. Obviously, there are certain ways that they do things and how they talk to their customers because it's how it made them successful.
Yeah.
And then obviously how they also handle their business. Aldi is very different than any other major grocery chain and how they handle their business while minimizing costs to make it more efficient for their customers. So I kind of try and keep that in my back pocket as well, is like, how can I make this easier for people? How can I make it more attractive? But yeah, I mean, everybody in that business is so smart and well educated, and they're passionate about it. They know what they're talking about. They know how to handle customers and clients and vendors, and so I was working with all different people at all times, and I think the customer service piece is so huge.
Now, I know you work with a lot of investors. Mm-hmm. So how has that market changed? Obviously with limited inventory, it's harder and harder to find, as you would say, deals.
Yeah.
So what's that been like? We're still 59% below inventory where we were in 2019.
Yep.
So what's that been like? Has it been harder to find properties that investors are interested in because of low inventory?
Very, very difficult. Yeah. I have a lot of investors that I work with. It's been very difficult to find properties that are available. I think a big issue that we've seen is there's so many people trying to do it now. There's a lot of people that are coming in that are just makeshift, pretend like they know what they're doing.
They watch a YouTube
throw
video.
It back, throw the house back together, slap some, paint on the walls, and then they try and resell it. And then that house sits on the market forever.
Yeah.
And they're trying to recoup their costs. So then it's not going to be one that my investors are going to purchase. So I think that's made it difficult, the competition to get the houses that are available.
Yeah.
But then obviously just the low inventory.
So on that, when someone comes to you and they are, interested in, buying property, is telling, I have two agents or two new loan officers. One bought their first house at 20, and the other at 25, which I think is just awesome.
Yeah.
But what do you tell them when someone comes to you and they say, I want to buy a house and I want to flip? Like, how much do you get involved in that conversation to kind of let them know, the pitfalls? Because I think, again, house hacking and all these things that people are flipping, like it sounds great, and they watch a video or they go to these seminars, and these people think that it's easy.
Yep.
But we obviously experience the negative side of it.
Yep.
So how much does your background and your experience help you educate those buyers?
Quite a bit. My father does investment properties. He's flipped several properties, so I got to work with him throughout those processes. So quite a bit. I think that there's so much more that goes into it than people realize, and it's sad when you see a house that's been grabbed off the market, multiple offers, somebody grabs it, they don't do anything to it, so it sits forever vacant, or again, it's not a great job that they've done, so it's not going to sell.
I see it all, like, you watch a 30-minute episode on TV, on HGTV, and you're like, we could do that, and they don't realize that episode was probably like 6 months worth of work and all the, pain and headache and the investment and time that go into it. So it's tough, but I think it's important to have, I always come back to education, like whether it's an investor, whether it's a first-time home buyer or repeat buyer. I think it's the one thing that our industry is lacking the most. One of the things I've said a lot of, and I've done a lot of reels on this and videos, is I think there's so much content right now on how to buy a home. Like everyone talks about how, you can do this and you go this step, and then we give handouts that have the step of how to buy a home. I think the one thing that most people are lacking right now is why to buy a home. Not how, but why. Why should I buy when rates are above 7%? Why should I buy when home prices are at an all-time high? Why should I buy now versus waiting? I think the more we can focus on the why, I think we'll get a lot of the people to get off the fence or maybe
That's a
move.
great point.
I mean, I think so. Do you find the conversations today are very different than the conversations you had in 2020, 2021?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the interest rates are huge,
Yeah.
a huge factor for home buyers right now.
Yeah.
I think that's why that is why our inventory is so low. People
Yeah.
refinanced back then and got these awesome rates, and now
Yeah.
they are sitting on these homes and they don't want to go up in rate. So my educational process is more so it's an investment for you,
Yeah.
and it's going to be a long-term investment. If it can also be short-term. But that you can always refinance. So
Yeah.
if you're so worried about the rate, it's okay. You can refinance later on when rates drop. And I think people don't really think about that or realize it. They're just
Yeah.
stuck in this era of like, oh my gosh, we're at 5% higher than we were,
Yeah.
and it's going to be the end all be all, when they don't really understand that, okay,
Yeah.
it's not like, would you rather fight and pay $100,000 over what
Yeah.
the home should be valued at with a higher rate,
Yeah.
refinance later, or do you want to just get the rate
And I
now?
think people think of buying a home. I always say this, but it's like when you buy a house, like when you buy a stock, like nobody looks at it every year, and like you pay attention to your portfolio, but it's not like, for some reason, housing is totally different.
Yeah.
Like, housing could go up 100%, 80% in 5 years. It goes down 2%, and everyone's like hitting the panic button.
I know.
But if they buy their 401k goes up, 20% and goes back down 5%, nobody thinks of it at all because we're not selling it, whatever. But housing just has a different emotion tied to it that I think a lot of people struggle with it. Fabian said something to me, the loan officer, and it really stuck with me. Is he said that, he's like, the thing that I always think about, he's like, is my 35-year-old self going to look back at my 25-year-old self and say, thank you so much for making these decisions?
Yeah.
Or am I going to say to myself, like, oh my God, I wish you would have, done something? Because when the average first-time home buyer age is 38, I've been doing a lot of these
crazy.
reels and doing the math on us. If you would have bought at 28 versus 38,
What's the
home
value?
prices are up 40% in DuPage County, 44% since in the last 10 years. Okay, so if you would have bought, you would have almost 50% gain.
Yeah.
Okay. And, now if you buy at 38, like you can't recreate those 10 years.
Right.
And 38, if you want to retire, everyone wants to retire now at like 55 or 60.
Yeah.
It keeps getting,
lower every year.
Like, I think that's the thing from an education standpoint that we need more of is, again, the why of like the impact of, paying down a house, what that has on your overall net worth. And I think that's what's gotten lost. We're so focused on rates that we've lost the conversation on building wealth and what that does long term.
Yep,
and
absolutely.
I just think that's where we need to focus. And I'm just curious, in your experience, like if you had a recent buyer that decided not to buy, maybe during the last few years, that you've reconnected with or talked to, that maybe like they're on the sidelines even more because they're like, oh my God, I should have done it then. Do you have anybody that comes to mind? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, tons of clients that will wait it out or, I mean, the inventory is obviously a huge issue. Most of my clients will at least stay on their searches, kind of see what's still coming out. So I think the lack of inventory is a huge factor in it just because there's not enough options available for them. But yeah, absolutely. People kind of waited out and now they're kind of kicking themselves like, oh my gosh, it's not going down like we thought it was going to. And, I've been paying rent now for the last 3 years and I could have been putting that in towards my mortgage. And so, yeah, I think it's a huge educational piece that most people are missing.
I was just talking about this and I was curious of your opinion, but, a lot of people are renting, so average first-time home buyer is 38. Okay, so a lot of them are renting. But, I feel like this is an issue, and I'm just curious. I've never really talked about it, but like a lot of these rentals, these high-end rentals are actually, they're newer.
Yeah.
They're really nice. They have, a lot of them are maybe under 5 years old. They have a lot of amenities. Some of them, we got a couple here where they have pools and, clubhouses and like they're kind of socially very active for younger people. And it's like, versus if they buy, they're buying something that needs a little bit of work. That's not brand new, doesn't have granite countertops, and I think, and I'm curious to your thought as do you feel like there's something to that, is that, maybe they want to purchase, but they're thinking more, I don't want to live in what I can afford. I'd rather just get this high-end rental. It's all brand new. I'll live the lifestyle a little bit, but then it just becomes like this every year. They just renew it because, because there's not, like, do you think there is something to that?
I do. I think that's a good point to make. I mean, most buyers right now in the market, want something that's fully renovated.
Yeah.
Like not many people, and besides investors, want to have to fix stuff.
Yeah.
I think a big part of that is probably how much inflation has risen.
Yeah.
On construction and materials and all of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, most people want to buy a home that's like fully lavish and redone and all, high-end finishes.
They want that HGTV moment where the door opens up and everyone's like, oh my God, it's perfect.
Yes.
Yeah.
So even for the first-time home buyer, they're expecting to buy their first house that's this beautiful masterpiece instead of reality, which, when you're 20-something, what can you really afford? Like, it's going to be something that you
But do you think that's where the
need to fix
education
up.
comes in, where it's like maybe buying that diamond in the rough is the one that's going to make you the most money?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And you make it your own. Like, I think that's what a lot of people lose sight of. Mm-hmm. I mean, you show people homes all the time. Like, some people can't even envision, like, a different paint color or... Like, it's very hard for people to, fathom that, the difference.
Yeah, for sure.
And they see something and they're like, oh, I don't like that. And you're like, well, you can change that.
Right.
Or I don't like the way the couch is. Like, well, you can move that, Like, sometimes people have a very hard time envisioning, that difference. But I feel like, these rentals are competing with buyers because they know that they have something that is, brand new appliances. There's zero maintenance.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I see a lot of younger generations, 30 to, they're getting married later, they're having kids later.
Or not at all.
Or not at all.
That's
we were actually just discussing that in a previous call. That's the new thing is, or if, my wife and I only have one child. So some people, if they have one
They're
and
like,
done,
let's
they say one and done. And then, I mean, I was 40 when I had my first child. So I was on the cusp of, not having kids. But, I feel like they call it like where people are traveling, they're going to concerts, they're going, like, there's a lot of competing places for money nowadays that 10 years ago we didn't really have. I mean, a lot of people are taking lavish vacations, Europe and all this stuff. So then when you think about buying a home, it's not as high on the list as it once was. And I don't know if that's more the education of why it's important to buy sooner. I think it's a lot of just, misunderstanding kind of like the benefits of that. Do you experience that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's people understanding that your rent payment is going towards the owner. It's not going towards you. You're not investing in yourself. Whereas if you purchase, you're probably going to be paying the same amount. I mean, typically you could be saving monthly payment depending on how high your rental is and all of that. But you're probably going to be paying around the same for mortgage payment as you are for rent. So instead of paying that same expense, you could be paying towards yourself and building an investment for later on.
Exactly.
So you could still do all the same things. I think people don't realize that. Like, you don't have to put your life on hold. Buying a house is by no means like end all be all. Like, this is the only thing you can do for the next 5 years. You can definitely find something that's the same price range as your monthly payment.
Well, I think the worst thing is too, is what I see a lot, which is really concerning to me, is like, the amount of, they're having these experiences, but a lot of time they're putting on credit cards and then they're having these huge monthly payments, and then they have a huge car payment, average car payment is $800 and some dollars. And then they come to us and they're like, Eric, I can't afford the payment. It's like, well, you can, it's just your money's, you're spending your money over here instead of here. So I think that's where buying younger is almost the opportunity, because it's, you almost catch people before they, sometimes not having the commitment of having the house can really allow you to make bad decisions.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. Like, I wish, I think I bought my first home when I was in early 30s. Like, I would have, if I could do it all over again, I would do, the gentleman in my office who bought a 20, I would do it all over again. Cause I was joking around with him. It's like, God, what I was spending my money on at 20 compared to what you did was I'm embarrassed to even say. Like, it's just like, so to me, I think that's the opportunity for us. And I guess that's what I wanted to get into is like, from a marketing standpoint, how, you have this great, you have a lot of diverse areas that you work, where you're in multiple areas. You do a lot of marketing. I see the stuff that you do, and now we're going to be adding a lot more video to that. But like, how much thought goes into like the marketing and how you do that, and kind of what is your thought process out of that? Is it more to stay top of mind, or is it more to educate? Like, what's kind of your thought on marketing?
Interesting. So kind of going back to your last statement.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of in that situation where I am on my fourth house now. So I definitely started the process early of
So how old
buying
were
and
you
selling.
bought your first house?
I think probably 23.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that.
And I made money on every single home. In different time frames
so
too.
what better person to help you buy a home than someone who bought at 23? Like, to me, I'm shocked at how many realtors don't even own a home. That are advising people how to buy a home. And here we have you.
Oh my
that
gosh,
is
I had to rent for the last 2 months or 2 years prior to my purchase this year, and I'm like, I can't believe that I was renting, throwing my money away. So I'm definitely somebody that advocates for purchasing, just because I've made money on every sale. No matter the time of year, all of that. So. I myself have seen how it can be a great investment, whether it be you're making a big check after, or if you've just lived for a couple of years and can sell it and make, basically lived for free. So I use that a ton in trying to talk to people, and I really do want to educate people. I think that people don't understand. I think there's a lot of bad eggs in our industry that aren't giving people correct information, are very pushy, or pressuring people into doing things that they don't want, and then they have a bad idea of how we are in this industry and how realtors are. So I try and educate people. I'm very no pressure. I want to keep an open flow conversation and just try and figure out how it can help them achieve their goals and realize that there is a lot of opportunity with it. And investing.
I'm glad you brought that up, because we talked about this a little bit before we started, but I'll just mention it. It's like one of the main reasons why I love this podcast is that, and one of the, the best is yet to come. It's a saying I say all the time to my team, but kind of the thought process is like, the best is yet to come for our industry, and your industry in particular. Is like, I think there's just been so much noise about realtors and what they do and what they don't. And the interesting thing that's come out of doing this podcast is getting, most of what people see on social media from a realtor is just like a 30-second snip about
the easy parts.
Yeah, the easy
stuff.
parts. Like, it's fun. But what they don't see, and what I've seen being in the business 20 years, is, you have 2 daughters, you're spending time away, you're getting babysitters, you're doing all these things, and then you're helping other people, and you're doing, like, nobody sees that. Like, through all, the noise this year, nobody was talking about, all the work that people do and the sacrifice. I use the word sacrifice a lot, but, I see a lot of realtors make more sacrifice, family time. I have a realtor that I know that's on one of Jake's teams, and I'll see her show up, and then I'll see her leave, because she's got to go do a showing, or she's got to do whatever. And it's like, that's what these people do, and they have 4 kids or 5 kids. You have 2, like, so I think that's the thing I hope that comes out of, is people seeing, because I don't think people know. But on that, I wanted to ask you. So, we always have, for me, it's my wife, like, sacrifice. Like, there's all these people in our lives that sacrifice a lot to let us do what we do, because we're doing things at very odd times. So we talked a little bit about your mom's always helping you babysit. So, what's that been like, in leaning on other people? And like, I don't think that people understand, like, how much it's not just us.
No,
There's all these other people that are in our lives that have to help us kind of do what we do.
Yeah, definitely. And I came into the industry with 2 very little girls on my own. I am a single mom, so have had them pretty much 100% of the time by myself. So many sacrifices with being up late, working late hours. I would get them to bed, and then I was in bed working on my marketing or admin or doing contracts at night, in the middle of the night, just so that I could spend the days with them. But I have a village that helps, neighbors that are awesome, and all of their friends that I plan play dates with. So I try and make it so it's not mom's just always working.
Exactly.
Because it definitely can get to that point, especially during busy season.
Well, but what you're going to see is like, your daughters are going to see their mom working so hard, and sets a great example for them. And, I think that's the best thing that comes out of it. Is that they're going to grow up seeing how hardworking their mom is, and all the things that she did. And she was like this superwoman that was able to be mom, but then also be realtor. And they're going to, as they get older, they're going to want to be more involved in things that you do.
Oh yeah. I take them to showings. They love it. I have, certain clients, I'll have them come out and do showings with me. I have a teacher of one of my daughters that I'm working with right now. So she loves to come and see her once in a while. So, it's been great for all of us, I think.
That's the side that I wish more people would tell the story on. Because I just don't think people realize, like, again, people get in this business because oh, I want to make my own schedule. You know, it's a typical thing. Or, you know, oh, they look so much
easy.
fun.
They make so much money on their sales.
Selling Sunset, you know, that was like everyone was watching that and it was so easy. But then, you know, I'm sure you come home at night and you get the kids to bed and then you're doing contracts and you're like, oh my God, I've been going nonstop.
Yeah.
That's what people don't understand. So I think that's what I hope, you know, when we do these podcasts and we interview realtors, it's kind of been the theme for a lot of the moms of like just how hard they work.
Yeah.
And as a single mom, it takes even a different, you know, twist. So I just, you know, I commend you for that because I don't think people understand what it takes to
it's a
to
lot
do
more
that.
work than I think people realize. There's a lot of back end stuff, and I think, you know, I've had a lot of clients that were for sale by owner, didn't work out. They had issues throughout the process. Then they would come to me, and I think that it's a lot more work than anyone really truly understands how much goes on behind the scenes. So I appreciate that.
No,
Thank
I
you.
mean it's tough. I think again, you know, when 70% of realtors don't close one deal in a year, and you have someone like yourself that does, and then, you know, obviously being a mom is the most important thing you're ever going to do.
Yes.
But you got to pay the bills, and being a realtor is something that provides a lot of. And I think, again, I hope more people understand that, you know, how difficult it is and how much you have to. The one thing I wanted to ask you though, like your business structure. So, are you more? I ask everyone this because I think it's important. Are you more, you know, by referral? Like, are you like, how is your business structured today? You get, you know, online leads? Are you using, you have your investors? Like, how do you structure your business and where does that typically come? Open houses? Like, where's your main source that you feel comes from?
Yeah, so I would say probably 80 to 90% of my business is friends, family, referrals.
Okay.
I definitely focus on that. I like to build good relationships. I have a lot of success stories from that, which obviously in turn has them sharing my information, which is I'm so grateful for. And then, I've been starting to do a lot more now that my kids are a little older. I have a little bit more time. I've been starting to do a lot more like leads programs.
I was going to say you probably got to get them. You probably got to get them in a lot of activities because then you can like cultivate the parents. No, cultivate the parents.
Yeah, get the parent list.
Yeah, so like I just talked to a realtor and that she said like once her kids got older and they started getting in, she's like, then I feel guilty because I'm like stuffing them in different groups because it's like then the parents all know that I'm a realtor.
You're getting all their emails and everything. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so we're getting close to that time frame for me.
Yeah.
But so I'm starting to kind of transition more now to taking on more outside leads and I'm open to anything obviously, but
so I think the you know, the referrals and customer experience and things like that are something that's very, you know, personal to me because it's something we focus our entire business on. You know, a lot of my business comes from realtors, you know, based on customer experience. But what I find is like, and I think this is important, you know, because it's so hard to juggle, is like, and I just had this conversation with someone. It's like when you're working with a lead or like something, you know, if they call you, you got to drop everything to do it. When it's a referral, they will wait for you.
Yeah, that's
true. And it's a much better way to build a business is by referral, and it's more sustainable and it's not so dependent because all it takes with some of these lead, you know, we've seen it with Zillow, we've seen it with realtor.com. They make one tweak and then it's like your whole business has to change and then you got to go find something else. And, you know, I've seen more and more realtors that are going back because some of them got away from it from a little bit. Going back to more referral based, like just focusing on, you know, their database and, you know, doing that because again, it easier to scale when instead of chasing leads and being an order taker and then someone calls you and says, hey, I want to go look at this house tonight. You're like, you know what? My daughter has something tonight. Okay. They'll just call someone else.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But when it's a referral, they're like, oh yeah, no problem, Kelly. You know, we'll get, you know, so-and-so and, you know, we'll meet you tomorrow and that's fine. So I think, do you find it's easier working with referrals than it is leads? Yeah.
And I think just me knowing them personally or having that personal relationship is awesome too, because I have that rapport already. I was going to mention too, like, I think that the leads programs can be a little deceiving too, just because I don't think people fully understand that you do not get paid as an agent until you close.
Oh yeah.
So a lot of people will have you chasing their tail, like you said, and then they'll jump onto somebody else that has the better availability or whatever the case may be. So building that rapport, having that relationship, I think is just in the long run pays off more for your time.
And we for the first time in a long time have been getting more online leads just because of some of the YouTube stuff and things that we've been doing. And I think the takeaway is like a referral is something where it just, you get on the phone and there's that instant report because there's that person that referred you,
right?
Or it's someone you've worked with in the past. It's easy. I feel like there's a lot more nurturing, as we call it, on a lead that, it's not immediate. Mm-hmm. And I think the mistake that most people make is, they call 3 or 4 times and they don't get a response. They're like, oh, it's just a bad lead.
Yeah.
High percentage of those convert at some point. Right. It just could be 6, 9, 10 months down the line.
Right.
And most people, let's be honest, are not calling more than 2 or 3 times.
Right.
So I think that is the key to, I think there's a place for those types of leads. I think it's more so the process and how you follow up with them is more how you're going to, but I think it's all about tracking and things like that. So I always like to mention that because I think there's a place for it.
Right. It's just a little bit more work. And like you said, it's a more long-term, and again, it's building up that relationship over time. You don't have that immediate connection with them. Yeah. Like you have to definitely get that relationship in place so they trust you.
So do you find, one of the things I like to ask is like, let's say you have a new listing, okay, you're going to go on a listing presentation. Are you more of, this is how I work, this is my process, this is how I like to do things? Or are you more like custom tailor, like how people want to work?
That's a great question.
Like, are you like, because I don't think there's a bad answer, to be honest with you, because there's plenty of really successful agents that are like, this is how I do things, get on the train and we're going, this way.
Vice versa,
and people will like jump on board and that's the way they work. Mm-hmm. But then there's other people that they'll kind of custom tailor, well, I don't want to do showings here and I just want to do this and I want to, like, are you more like where you'll accommodate people or are you more firm on how you work?
I would say I'm probably in the middle. I have my standard structure, I have my team, I have my process, but I definitely tailor to like the client as far as what they want.
Yeah.
It's nothing's ever off the table, right? Like, I don't think people either understand that process of being a realtor is you create everything yourself.
Yeah.
Like every realtor is different. Every process is different for every realtor because there's no handbook as to how you have to do things. It's not XYZ, black and white. Like you create your own process and you build your business from how you handle things. So I definitely have my own process in place of what's been successful. I will present that to my clients and kind of give them recommendations, but I definitely take into account what they want and, how they kind of feel as well.
I think it's good. I think the consumer always likes to feel like they're in somewhat of a control. Or I think the key is to make them feel like they're in control, but yet you're really
right.
You kind of know.
They have input.
But they have input, and you're just kind of giving them the confidence to make an informed decision. I think that's the most powerful way to deal with. We get it all the time too, where like someone's like, well, I only want to, if you need to talk to me, I can only do it at 8:00 at night. And we'll obviously be like, okay, that's fine. But there's plenty of people who are like, well, I'm not working at 8:00 at night. But we just know that sometimes they could have kids. They want to put their kids to bed. They both want to be together to have a conversation. Yeah. And that little tweak can save us sometimes hours later. Yeah. Because there's nothing worse than you talk to husband, the wife's upset that you didn't talk to her, and then or
Same
vice versa.
Happening multiple
exactly.
times.
So we always say like, when can we get everyone together? And whatever time that is, we'll do it. Yeah. Because it can save hours, but we're still doing our process. Just sometimes you got to tweak it a little bit just to accommodate the customer. Yeah.
Yeah, and everybody's different. Every sale is different. Every house is different. Yeah. Like everything's different. There's no standard on anything. I don't think.
And how do you handle, I said in the beginning, I think you're always very solution oriented, but how has it been handling conflict? Because this is tough. Like, it could be other people in our industry. It could be a seller. It could be a buyer. It could be on a transaction. How, coming from a corporate background, not a lot of conflict. Everyone's usually on their best behavior, typically.
Tries to be, yeah.
Yeah. What was that like coming into the industry and handling that?
I think it's a learning process. Yeah. Like there's no one set way of doing things. You get a good team in place that you trust, with your outside people, like your lenders, your attorneys, your, inspectors and things like that. So it's hard. It's not just you in the sale. And I don't think people understand that there's outside people that are helping the sale process as well. Yeah. So you put your trust into people and you hope that they're giving the same amount of service that you are. But definitely conflict happens. I think you just have to learn from it. You try and figure out solutions. I try and keep my clients out of it as much as possible. By working behind the scenes, whether it be with the attorney or, with the lenders and trying to figure it out.
Have you had anything with like a client where like you had to like, get involved, or maybe nothing to do with you, but there was just, because that's hard for people to do. I said, sitting face to face with someone at a kitchen table or handling a call. I mean, I always say like the worst comes out in people when they're buying a house.
Yeah.
Like the worst. Like I've had it where someone like, you're like, oh my God, this person's going to leave us the worst review. Like they're miserable. And then they leave like the nicest review. And like to them, they weren't even like, it was almost like a different person. Like they were just so stressed out that they were just like, but then afterwards when it's done, they're totally fine. Like, have you had any experience that you had to kind of like learn from just, with anything that went wrong or?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a couple of people that have had some bumps in the road, and I think that, like you said, it can be a very emotional process. So I think it's just trying to get them to understand the process, educate them, and trying to kind of do some damage control on the bumps for them. But as long as you're educating everybody going into the process, hopefully you can just kind of hit those reminders along the way.
I always say, like, some of my best relationships in this industry were kind of built out of conflict. Yeah. It's kind of weird. Like, because I feel like that's where, I think it's easy, when, as a lender, like when you get a 10-day clear to close and everyone's happy, like that's easy. As a lender, you should be able to handle that.
Right.
I think, it's when something goes wrong.
And you can solve
and how you handle it, how you communicate. You don't hide it from anybody. You're transparent. Yeah. I feel like that's where relationships are really built. That's why I always like, having the conversation, because I feel like, the end result, like someone getting the loan closed, like that's the expectation.
Right.
Or someone selling their house and getting top dollar. Nowadays, that's the expectation.
Yeah. And like, quickly.
Exactly.
Like everybody expects
They're
it to be
hiring you to
so
handle
fast.
all the shit that they don't want to handle. Yeah. It's essentially like, and it's how, like, and I feel like that's what your strength is when I work with you, is like you don't get very high, like on certain things, but you're also not very, like, you're very even. And I think the best realtors are that way.
Oh,
like, because they're not like going back and forth between like, emotions. Yeah. Because emotions will get people out of who they are. And then you just never know, and I feel like you have a very good handle on things, and it makes it, as a lender, I'll just tell you, like, there's nothing worse than just getting yelled at, or not that you would ever yell, but there's all these distractions like an attorney, because instead of working on the solution, I'm just dealing with the other thing. And you're always very good about like just letting us or the team just get done what we need to get done. Yeah. And I just can't tell you how much that helps, because it allows us to get to the solution that much quicker. It's a big help.
Good point. And I think also with the clients that I've dealt with that have had bumps come up along the road and we've solved them, I think that they appreciate me even more towards the end.
Oh, absolutely.
They realize like, this is why you need an agent. This is why we need a team. Like, I think that's a huge part of it too, is you just have to get to the end result. Like, we're all here for the same reason. Yeah. And just trying to get to the finish line as easy as we can. And sometimes there's going to be, some things that happen along the way, but we're all here for the same reason. So
I think it's just, I think a lot can be learned from transparency, and just letting them know, it's not always great news, but it's better than the alternative of, I think what happens a lot of times is lenders try to fix it all the way up, and then when it doesn't get fixed, then they got to drop the bomb at the end, and it's just like, there's nothing worse than that.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
So one of the things I wanted to kind of touch on is, so I always say this, and then we talked about it a little bit before we start filming, but like, I don't think people realize like the amount of homes that are on the market. So there's the market that everyone thinks is out there. Yeah. But then there's this other market that's the private network that, homes get on there, they sell, nobody ever knows, and so
secret sales is what
exactly. And like, you have all these buyers that are just sitting on the sidelines, going through Redfin, going through Zillow. Can you talk a little bit about, what the value is and how you identify properties and kind of what your process is with a buyer or even a seller that needs to buy to kind of make, because it's 1 in 4 homes sell, on off-market listings. Yeah. So, and just, if you can, just quickly explain what off-market, I don't even think people even realize it exists.
Yeah.
And the only reason I say this is, there was an article, and I think it was like 70 or 80% of people didn't even understand.
Yeah,
that
I don't think a lot of people know about it.
Yeah.
So in order to get access to the private network, which is a huge network right now, like you said, 1 in 4 sales typically come from the private network right now. You have to be working with a licensed agent, and you have to be set up in the MLS search.
And just real quick, touch on why a lot of sellers are choosing to even list in the private network, because it doesn't make sense to a lot of people, because they're like, well, why would I want exposure to everyone? So can you talk a little bit about what the benefit is?
Yeah, there's lots of different reasons that people list in the private. One of the big ones being that they don't want a million people coming through their home or contacting them from outside sources such as Zillow, Realtor.com, that kind of thing. So it keeps it much more private. They know for sure anybody coming to view their home is going to be pre-approved. They're working with a realtor. They're a serious buyer. So it just kind of keeps some of that noise out, some of the distractions, some of the people out of their home. They could also be working on some updates, doing some painting, things like that. Maybe the house isn't fully ready to be live. So they're kind of going on the private to get an idea if anybody's interested.
Sometimes people do it for like the first week or two just to see if they can sell it without having to go through. And then if they do, then it's
then
just,
they don't have to list it. So it
yeah.
saves time. It saves everybody's energy. They don't have to have, like I said, they don't have to worry about being gone for showings. Having an open house, all of that kind of stuff. It just kind of eliminates that process and makes it a lot easier for the seller.
So as a buyer then, okay, so this is kind of what I talk a lot with buyers on this, is like, this is all the reason that you should be communicating with a realtor to get these listings and have access to them. Because it's 1 in 4 homes they're potentially not seeing.
Correct.
And the other 75% that they are seeing is going to have way more activity on them. Okay. So can you talk a little bit about how, if you have a buyer, like how often do you check the private network, and like what's that process like to work with a buyer?
Yeah, so my buyer process is I'll sit down with them, kind of determine what they're looking for, what areas, bedrooms, bathrooms, that kind of thing, their budget. I will get them set up on a search in the multiple listing system, and then that's kind of an automatic search. So I'm going in every morning and checking myself manually to see if there's anything that kind of fits their criteria that I feel would be a good one for us to check out. But they're also being emailed every time a home is listed. So they get access to every home that's available. And then I also do that double check every morning to kind of see if there's anything that's a good fit for them too, and so I can send it to them as well.
I think some buyers think like, well, I don't want to reach out to a realtor because then they're going to be, it's kind of like, I always say like, you go into a department store and someone comes up to you and they're like, can I help you? And you're like, I'm just browsing. How many times have we done that?
Yes.
And then, 10 minutes later, we're at the counter buying something. It's like, we were looking, we just didn't want to be bothered yet. And I think a lot of these buyers are kind of in that browsing stage.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have friends and family. They're like, I have Realtor.com open all the time. I'm looking at houses every day.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not even in the market, but they're still looking.
Exactly. So I think there's this perception like, oh, if I reach out to a realtor and I get set up on this search, that they're going to be calling me every day, or like I need to sign up. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think that's the opportunity, is being able to, see these homes. Because again, it's 25% of the market. And who knows, maybe it'll be more than that. I think that number keeps going higher.
It does, yeah.
And so I think, I know there's always talk about changing the rules on that. I don't know if that will ever happen, but it's all the more reason to reach out to a realtor early on in the process because, and then do you have like, how does the buyer consultation, like when do they go out and look at homes? Like what does that timeline look like? If someone says like, hey, I want to go out and look at homes, like what does that timeline look like?
Honestly, everybody's different. Some people are in a huge time crunch, so I kind of push for getting out sooner. Otherwise, I'm a very, very laid back agent to where I set their search up. I will kind of go through like I said, every morning I kind of go through for all my clients, see if there's anything that I see that stands out for them. Other than that, I kind of let them come to me. Like I'm definitely not bombarding their phone. I do some checkups maybe once a week or once every couple weeks. But otherwise, they're usually just sending me something that interests them once it comes across.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so here we are, 2025. Okay. Now interest rates 7%. To me, like I've seen more activity the last 30, 60 days. Like we had a very, very busy January. I think a lot of what the market is going to do is dependent on, inflation, job market. There's a lot of uncertainty still that I think is I think if you look at consumer confidence, things like that, the consumer is still somewhat, they're still spending however much money on eggs. They're still, there's a lot of uncertainty in the market. But I kind of feel like we're at this point where everyone's kind of getting comfortable with where rate, when rates went from, 4 to 7, like that's startling.
Right.
But if they go from like 7 to like 6, that's going to feel very different than it did going from 5 to 7 or anything like that. So I'm curious if, you're starting to see a different mindset among buyers and sellers that are not as much focused on rates. I know everybody's focused on it.
Yeah.
But forever, it was just like, it was like a mental block where they just couldn't. Do you feel them starting to kind of a little like accept it a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's why we're starting to see more houses listed. Definitely more buyers hitting the market.
Yeah.
I think people are starting to understand like this isn't the end of the world. 7% is actually pretty average for how the housing market is typically. So I think people are getting more comfortable with that idea, and it's not something that my clients are really bringing up anymore.
That's good. Yeah.
So I think that I think people are getting more comfortable with it and are starting to maybe even educate themselves a little bit more on the refinancing process if they need to.
I always say too, like when rates were 8%, last year or the year before, home prices still went up 5 to 7%.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, like, if inventory is still 59% below where, like, if they went up at 8%,
right.
there was any time home prices were going to go down, it was at an 8%, and we were at 8.25 at one point. Like, it was going to be then. So what do you think they're going to do if they go to 6.5? Like, do you think they're going to go down? Like, I mean, just think about that. Like, at 8%, they went up 7%. Like, if there was any time, and that was, if you remember, like, we went from 4 to 8.
It was a big jump.
Fast.
Like
that was a time where home prices would have went down, and they didn't. They went up.
Yep.
So what do you? And I think that's the thing is like there's so much pent up seller demand. The average tenure of home sellers is like 11 years now. Forever, that stat was like 4 to 7 years.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of seniors that are aging in place.
Yeah.
There's all these dynamics that are kind of lining up. And if you look at how many millennials, average first time, home buyer, and you look at how many millennials like reach that age, and you look at Gen X or Gen Z, whatever, Gen Z, they're reaching prime home buying, like all these things are kind of lining up.
Yeah.
And we just don't have inventory.
Right. Like that's the problem.
It's almost scary in a lot of ways because, we don't have enough even rentals for, I had a buyer today call me that they're paying $3,500 a month in a rental.
Yeah,
like
it's crazy.
It's crazy. Yeah.
It is. And that's because the demand.
Yeah.
It's there. Like people need a home to live in.
Absolutely.
And there's not enough homes.
Yeah.
So it's a major, major problem that we have right now. And that's one thing I'm focusing on is working with renters to see if they qualify.
Yeah. So we were going to talk about that a little bit. So what has been that? Obviously, there's a ton of renters. We've talked about it a little bit, but like, what's that conversation been like?
Yeah, so I mean, absolutely. Some people are in the position where they have to rent, right? Like maybe they're moving, maybe they don't know where their job's going to be.
Yeah.
There's always a situation where renting is a good option, but I try and talk people through the process of maybe seeing if they can get pre-approved, just to see if they qualify. Maybe help them create an investment for themselves, save some money. So that's something that I'm trying to focus on with people is getting them to understand what their options are. I'm sure you've seen it, but
a lot of these people think they still need 20% down.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, so just the talking to them.
Yep.
And let them know that you can do 3% down. You can get down payment assistance.
The credit programs too. I mean, people most of the time that are renting because they have bad credit.
Yeah.
But I talk with them and I'm like, hey, it's okay. Like at least let's get a game plan in place. You can raise your credit. Let's work with a lender.
Yeah.
They can help you kind of figure out what you need to do to get your credit up to a good place to buy. So I think a lot of people are just stuck on that mindset of like, I have bad credit, I can't buy.
I mean, honestly, I can't tell you how many times people come to us and they say, I don't think I can buy, and they're placing an offer 2 weeks later. Like, it's crazy.
Absolutely. And they're probably paying less than they were.
We just had one yesterday. The people are in their 60s, first-time home buyers.
Oh, my gosh.
60s, okay?
Wow.
Never owned. For 2 weeks, they put off the application. They wanted to come in person. They're like, we're never going to be able to buy. There's no way. We did the application face-to-face. They brought in all their tax returns paperwork. They were pre-approved that night. And they placed an offer. yesterday, and I got accepted today.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
Congrats
and like
to them.
they're still freaking out about it, but
oh my gosh! Yeah.
But it's like, here's someone that for 40 years thought they couldn't purchase.
Right.
Like they were like insistent that they're not going to be able to purchase.
Oh yeah, I've had so many of them.
Yeah, and they were worried about cash to close. They only had like $4,000 or something. They qualified for a $10,000 grant. Okay, and then we were able to negotiate a little bit of a credit from the seller.
Yeah.
They were pretty generous on it, and it worked out perfectly. But it's a prime example of someone who thought that they couldn't buy.
Yep.
But if a 60-year-old can buy for the first time,
right,
a 25 or a 35-year-old should be able to buy.
So that's what I'm kind of focusing on right now too, is trying to get people to understand their options, right? Like it's not something you have to do immediately, but hey, maybe this is something we can look at in a year from now. At least get to know your options, see what we can do with your credit, how can we raise it, what do we need to do to help you out. So I think it's just the
I think what you're
going
to find too is like a lot of these people don't even have credit issues. Like that's what we see now more than anything. A lot of these people are just renting because it's convenient.
Yeah, and they've been there. They've been doing it. They're just going to keep doing
it. It used to be like, when we would do, when I first got in the business, we would do all this stuff with rentals, and it was always the same thing. It was always credit challenges and things like that.
Yeah.
Now we're finding it's totally different. It's like a lot of people have really good credit, good income. Like they're just kind of either intimidated by buying, their parents told them it's a bad idea, or relationship status is not where they want it to be, so they're not sure renting is easy.
Down,
exactly. Yeah. So like that's what we see a lot of right now, but it's interesting because like the one area that we're seeing more and more is that single females are, if you look at the stats, they're like rising a lot.
I believe it.
I mean, single men, I think they're moving back in with mom and dad more and more. Like there's stats on that. Yeah. There's
women want to be more independent.
I'm worried about single women if more are moving back home. But there's been studies on this where a lot of single men are not as financially stable as single females, and single females are buying at a much bigger pace than single men. So it's interesting to see how these dynamics will play out. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, for sure.
So before we end, we always have a little bit of fun, and just ask a non-real estate related question. Okay, it'll be easy. Don't worry.
All right.
So if it was not real estate, okay. So real quick, so before we get to that, like what does Kelly and the family do? Like what's kind of like what you do to unwind? What's kind of your passion outside of work, being a mom? Is there something, what's just something you like doing? Do you paint? Do you listen to music?
Yeah, that's a good question. I do a lot of crafting. I have a Cricut machine, so I make shirts and tons of different stuff with my Cricut, tumblers, all that kind of stuff. So I do that for fun. My girls love helping me out. They love doing crafts.
Is it kind of a way to just do something that doesn't take a lot of like thought, and it's like clears your I wash my car all the time. That's kind of like why I do it.
Decompress.
Yeah, it bugs the crap out of my wife because I'm always out washing my car. But like to me, it's like I'm not thinking.
Yeah.
You know how like when you watch a show on Netflix and you got to think too much.
Yes.
But when you used to watch like old shows, you could just like
you throw it on in the background.
And like that's why I like doing. That's why I was like asking like just to unwind a little bit.
Yeah, I make stuff all the time, and some of it I'll sell, but most of it I'll do for the girls or myself, or I'll give stuff away. I make stuff for clients all the time. So,
it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Okay, so if it wasn't real estate and money was not an object, okay, what would be kind of the dream job for you?
Interesting question. I've never honestly thought about it because I love my job so much.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Is there anything you always wanted to do, like growing up, or,
I mean, I really wanted to be a doctor.
Okay.
But I can't handle all of that comes with it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I never ended up going to medical school.
Yeah.
But I think my dream was always just to own my own business.
Okay. Well, I mean,
just
technically
to be a
you
business
do.
owner.
Yeah.
So, I'm just super passionate about real estate. But I would say just owning my own business.
Was that kind of like from your dad, kind of owning his own?
I think so.
Did he own his own business, like flipping homes and?
Yeah. So he's been an insurance broker forever.
Okay.
Owns his own business doing that, and he did that when I was younger, and then he kind of got into the investment properties and things like that. So I've always grown up with him as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And I think that just is something that I've always
Because you always have that example of someone that ran a business that you've kind of looked after, like, and looked up to doing that. You kind of need that in life. So it's interesting because I think being an entrepreneur is not for everybody. Yeah. Like you have to have a certain, mind. I mean, at the end of the day, like every month you're back to zero. So like it takes a special
drive for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, I think my girls push me for that. I want them to see me successful. And then also I know how much my dad was able to be around. Like he was always our coach. He was always at every event for us. Like that gives me the drive to want to make this career work because I can be there for them for those things.
That's great. I love that because like I always say too, like, my parents were always at every soccer game, it's a funny story. They missed one game in my entire.
Do you remember it?
No, I broke my hand at the game.
Oh my
And
gosh.
this was before, cell phones. So they went to the Bears game. My dad got Bears tickets. So I break my wrist.
Oh, no.
Okay, at a soccer. Only missed one game and I break my wrist. Okay. So they're paging my parents at the game because, again, this is before cell phones.
Oh, my gosh.
And my mom's like, are they saying? And my dad's like, no, it's nothing. So sure enough, they had to come home. So my mom never missed another game after that. So they missed one game and I broke my hand.
Karma.
So yeah, I know. Yeah. So that's what you get for. So I always think about that though. It's funny, like, growing up, there was always like the parents that were at things and the parents that were. And when your parents are, I don't know if you always appreciate it when you're younger, but when you get older and you become a parent, it's something you're like, oh wow, it's not as easy as I thought it was. Yeah.
I mean, it's time consuming.
Oh yeah,
it's exhausting. You're planning your schedule, you're planning their schedule, and you're trying to be at both. And but yeah, this career is.
So what are your girls doing now? Are they doing like dance or anything?
They're in cheer. Okay. They're both in competitive cheer. So
you realize where that takes you.
Yes.
Going? Have you talked to older parents? They haven't talked you out of this yet.
Yes. So this will be our second year signing up, and I cannot get them to get off the ledge.
If I had you talk to my boss, he would like tell you to run for the hills.
I know. Yeah. I know. I'm still on the fence. I'm like, okay, are we for sure doing it this year? Like, let's try something else. But they are pretty set on doing it again. So we'll see. We did our first year last year. It was super fun.
You're gonna enjoy every minute. I laugh because he's like, it's
nonstop.
Oh yeah.
And it's crazy money.
Well, that's the thing about sports nowadays is it's not sports anymore. It's a business.
Right. Yeah.
Like nothing is. There's no park district. Like it's travel.
How much money can we make from each opportunity?
Yeah. It was. I just saw a comedian say he's like, oh, Dad, I made the hockey team. He's like, no, that's just a $5,000 thing that everybody makes a team. They just want my $5,000. He's like, I knew you made the team because I got a Chase fraud alert for my $5,000 that they swiped on my credit card. Yeah.
Yeah, so, it is true though.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I know it's
because Jake's 10, so we're like in soccer and flag football.
You're doing
and
all this stuff
basketball.
too.
It's like it's insane.
Nonstop.
Yeah, I mean, when I was younger, it was a sport. Now it's a business. It's totally different. But I have some friends that do gymnastics, cheer, and dance, and they're all like in a different state like every weekend.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we did Florida.
Oh, that's right. I remember. Yeah.
We did Florida, so that was awesome. But again, it's just crazy how much you spend and how much time
you got to sell a lot of homes.
I know. I joke with them all the time. I'm like, if you guys want to be able to do cheer, like you got to let mommy go to work because I got to sell some houses.
Well, I just want to say thank you again. It's been a pleasure working with you.
For having
me. I always say like, it's you've been in this business long enough, and there's certain people that always treat your staff and the people that I always like, for me, like I don't care how people treat me, but I always how they treat my staff. You're always so wonderful to my team and so nice, and I just always appreciate how you've been and how supportive you've been. I know we've worked together on numerous deals. I just want to say thank you for that. Yeah. And I look forward to sitting down again in the near future. We'll catch up and see how the spring market turned out to be and see what happens to rates. And, I always say you want to get busy, plan a vacation. So plan a vacation and then, things will kick off. But just want to say thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me. This is awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you.